working on Psalm 17. Magically speaking, Psalm 17 is often used to cause any ill will toward you to be diverted, for understanding the eternity of your soul, and also, interestingly enough, for safe travel. Today, we're going to use Psalm 17 to reverse any negative energy. If you feel like you're being hexed or cursed, this will reverse that energy. Any negative energy being directed towards you is going to bounce right off of you. The way we work Psalm magic is extremely effective, and it's actually quite simple. We take the psalm in question and we recite it out loud once, all the way through, without stopping. That's called an incantation. After we're finished with that incantation, we go back through that same psalm and we consider each verse in turn, one at a time, and we dig for hidden, occult meanings that lie within each verse. Through this digging and searching, and also trying to apply what we find to the situation at hand, we take those what we call magic seeds, which are those occult meanings, and plant them deeply into our minds, where they, in a very real sense, take root, grow, blossom forth, and bear fruit after their kind. And that's exactly what we are all going to do together right now with Psalm 17. Hear the right, O Lord, attend unto my cry. Give ear unto my prayer that goeth not out of feigned lips. Let my sentence come forth from thy presence. Let thine eyes behold the things that are equal. Thou hast proved mine heart. Thou hast visited me in the night. Thou hast tried me, and shalt find nothing. I am purposed that my mouth shall not transgress. Concerning the works of men by the word of thy lips, I have kept me from the paths of the destroyer. Hold up my goings in thy paths, that my footsteps slip not. I have called upon thee, for thou wilt hear me, O God. Incline thy ear unto me, and hear my speech. Show thy marvelous loving kindness, O thou that savest by thy right hand, them which put their trust in thee, from those that rise up against them. Keep me as the apple of the eye. Hide me under the shadow of thy wings, from the wicked that oppress me, from my deadly enemies who compass me about. They are enclosed in their own fat. With their mouth they speak proudly. They have now compassed us in our steps. They have set their eyes bowing down to the earth. Like as a lion that is greedy of his prey, and as it were a young lion lurking in secret places. Arise, O Lord, disappoint them, cast him down. Deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword. From men which are thy hand, O Lord, from men of the world which have their portion in this life, and whose belly thou fillest with thy hid treasure. They are full of children, and leave the rest of their substance to their babes. As for me, I will behold thy face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness. So this starts out as if somebody's being unjustly accused of something. It's talking to the Lord, and the Lord in the Psalms is the tetragrammaton, so Yud-He, Vav-He, or Yehovah or Jehovah, Yahweh. It's speaking right to this infinite intelligence, and we have to remind ourselves what that means, magically speaking. When you're speaking the psalm religiously, there's this deity out there, and you're worshiping that deity, and you're petitioning that deity and hoping that that deity does something for you. But when you're working magically, you understand that that is not a deity per se, but the actual source of all that is. From that perspective, you are always one with that source. It's as if the sun is beaming forth rays of light, and you are one of those rays of light. As such, there is no place where you stop and that source, infinite intelligence or God, stops. We have to remind ourselves what that source actually is. I like to go through some of the qualities before I start really working the psalm. And this is a rather long psalm, so we'll just go quickly through a couple of them. Infinite life, infinite soul, infinite spirit, infinite truth. Think about that. The truth is infinite, and there's no place that a lie can stand up in the midst of this. The infinite spirit is that which cannot be destroyed. That means there's nothing that can oppose this force. There's nothing that can destroy it. And so if you're one with that force, which we've described ourselves as because we're an emanation from that force, ultimately nothing can touch you. And so when we're working the psalm, we're orienting ourselves toward that relationship that we have with the infinite intelligence, which is a magical relationship. Hear the right, O Lord, attend unto my cry. So this is the truth. I'm telling you the truth. And I want you to know who I am as the truth. I'm your true child. I'm your true extension. And attend to my cry is simply us recognizing that we have to start this thing. We have to start the ball rolling when we're working any kind of magic. It doesn't just suffice to know that we're an extension of infinite intelligence. If there's something going on in our experience here that needs to be addressed, we don't just hope that one day infinite intelligence notices it and fixes it. No, we have to be the catalyst for change. And so that's why we say, attend unto my cry, give ear unto my prayer that goeth not out of feigned lips. Like, I'm not telling you any stories here, infinite intelligence. I'm not lying, and I recognize that you always hear me, but since I'm instigating this, since I'm getting the ball rolling, then things have to happen, because that's how it works. Let my sentence come forth from thy presence. Let thine eyes behold the things that are equal. I'm recognizing that nothing in this situation has the power to sentence me, if you will, or has the power to create an outcome. The only outcome that has any power is the outcome that comes from you, that comes from infinite intelligence. And remember that infinite intelligence is also infinite truth. And since it's infinite truth, the truth prevails here. Not any lies, not any misunderstandings, none of that stuff. Whatever you're coming to the psalm for, the truth is the only reality here. Thou hast proved mine heart. Thou hast visited me in the night. Thou hast tried me and shalt find nothing. Infinite intelligence, when it visits you in the night, that's talking about your deep mind. Your deep mind always understands that infinite intelligence is connected to you. Infinite intelligence already proved your heart. That's also your deep mind. And since the deep mind of who you are was created by infinite intelligence, we are accepting the fact that the only thoughts that we want within that deep mind are those which infinite intelligence thinks through us. And if that's the case, then there's nothing for us to worry about, because infinite intelligence can't find anything other than truth in us, can find nothing but pure love, can find nothing but goodness in us, because that's how we were created. Anything that doesn't look like those qualities of infinite intelligence in us aren't real. And so we let go of those, we disown those things, and we allow infinite intelligence to see only that which is true about us and to help us to discard any thoughts that don't hold up that truth. I am purpose that my mouth shall not transgress. Our words now are going to reflect that truth, and we're not going to spend or waste any of our time talking about things that don't exist, that don't really exist. If there's a problem that you've come to the psalm for, once you work the psalm, you don't need to talk about that problem anymore. You definitely don't need to complain about that problem anymore. The only time you have to talk about that problem is when you are directed to talk about that problem from infinite intelligence itself. Concerning the works of men, by the word of thy lips, I have kept me from the paths of the destroyer. The word of infinite intelligence's lips is the word. The word is the creative power of infinite intelligence. It's the power of creation itself. Whenever we talk about the word here, infinite intelligence's word, that's always a reminder that we didn't create ourselves. We're not responsible for our own creation. And anytime that we try to create ourselves, we make mistakes. We add things to perfection, the perfection of who we are. God didn't make a mistake with us. God didn't create junk, but God also didn't create all the extras that we've put on top of ourselves. So this psalm is so far very clear about the fact that infinite intelligence is in charge, not us. Thank goodness. keeping from the paths of the destroyer. The destroyer is the ego in this particular sense. Those thought forms within the human consciousness that are self-destructive, that try to carve out experiences that are separate from perfection. If you think about what the ego means I'm going to try to do something different from God. I want to create a world wherein I am completely unique and different. And if you understand that the only real way to try to make yourself different and unique from perfection is to find ways to express yourself as imperfect. And so the ego has us snowed, thinking that we're doing these wonderful things of uniqueness, when in reality, what it's trying to do is carve out a false world for ourselves that is separate from the perfection that we were created to be. So that's the destroyer. And so reminding ourselves the word of the infinite intelligence's lips are keeping us from the paths of the destroyer, that simply is a way of reminding ourselves that infinite intelligence created us. We didn't create ourselves. So anything that we created as ourselves doesn't really exist, and we don't want it. We only want the truth about us, which is all powerful, all good, all loving, all prosperous, all everything that infinite intelligence's will for us would have, because infinite intelligence's will for us is happiness. Hold up my goings in thy paths, that my footsteps slip not. So you don't make mistakes when infinite intelligence guides you, holds you up, shows you where to go, what to do, what to say, how to get there, what to avoid while you're there, all of those things. You don't have to worry about any mistakes if you are coming from the point of view of being guided and led, moment by moment by moment. I have called upon thee, for thou wilt hear me, O God. Incline thy ear unto me, and hear my speech. Again, this is us reminding ourselves that the solution doesn't come from us. We ask and then we receive. It's not up to us to solve this problem. It's not up to us to protect ourselves or to defend ourselves. It's up to us to ask that infinite intelligence's will be done. And then we allow that will to be done. Show thy marvelous loving kindness, O thou that savest by thy right hand. We've got two opposing Sephiroth on the tree of life, two opposing spheres on the Hermetic tree of life. Loving kindness is sphere number 4, and the right hand of God is severity, sphere number 5. And those two spheres frequently work hand in hand in these psalms, because one side is justice and mercy, the other side is the execution of justice and severity. So we want infinite intelligence to take care of the ego and all that goes along with it, including whatever the situation is that you've come to the psalm about. We want it to be severely dealt with, but we have to understand that how we're dealt with is different, because we're not the ego. We're not the problem. We are the divinely loved child of infinite intelligence. You are beloved of your parent. You are beloved of your creator. And your creator has no desire to harm you or punish you or any of that. But also, your creator doesn't have any desire to harm or punish any other person. It's the behavior, it's the wrong thinking, it's the illusory nature of the ego and of this world that must be dealt with severely. Because you'll understand, once this all is resolved, that it's not the person that was the problem, it was their behavior, perhaps, or whatever it came along with that behavior that was the problem. So two opposing forces that come together in cooperation, Jupiter and Mars. Them which put their trust in thee from those that rise up against them. So whatever rises up against you, rather than you going in and fixing it or fighting with it or defending yourself from it, that's your cue to go turn to infinite intelligence to handle it for you. Because infinite intelligence knows how to use severity when that's appropriate and loving kindness when that's appropriate, and how to separate those two. And you don't understand that. And you'll get yourself into trouble if you try to defend yourself or you try to handle it yourself. So your first response when something comes up against you in this world is say, I'm going to infinite intelligence about this. Keep me as the apple of the eye. Hide me under the shadow of thy wings. Well, of course, that's how infinite intelligence deals with you. You don't have to remind infinite intelligence to please love you and please care for you, but you have to remind yourself, and that's what this is. So sometimes just walking through your day, reminding yourself that infinite intelligence loves me and cares for me, or the Creator loves me and cares for me, or God loves me and cares for me, constantly. Just reminding yourself that you're loved and cared for and protected and guided. Right? We need that reminder constantly so that we don't miscreate with our minds out of fear. But infinite intelligence doesn't need to be reminded of that, because infinite intelligence is already protecting you, loving you, and caring for you. But you see, infinite intelligence is not going to go up against your thoughts, because you have the freedom to think what you will. So if you have thoughts that are, I'm vulnerable, or I have to go fix things myself, or nothing ever works for me, or everybody's out to get me, or I'm unsafe here, people are attacking me. If you've got those kind of thoughts, infinite intelligence can't swoop in and say you are not allowed to think those thoughts. You are not allowed to use your mind in that way. And I forbid such things. You will be safe. You will be protected. It's not going to happen because you were granted free will. So it's up to you to remind yourself to change your thoughts and focus them back on the truth, which is that you are cared for, you are protected, you are loved, you are provided for. From the wickedness that oppresses me, from my deadly enemies who compass me about. One of the great things about the Psalms is that they don't just pretend like everything is so nice. They don't do that. They are very clear and honest with what appears to be happening before us. It appears as though everything is falling apart. They are really out to get me. They're compassing me about. My problems are plaguing me. I'm so afraid. Those kinds of things. Keep me as the apple of the eye. Hide me under the shadow of thy wings from the wicked that oppresses me, from my deadly enemies who compass me about. What a powerful thing to say, because you are acknowledging what you think you see, and at the same time you're acknowledging that those things have no power over you, because infinite intelligence loves you and cares for you and protects you. So you're using your mind in the right way in these two verses. They are enclosed in their own fat. With their mouth they speak proudly. That is the ego in a nutshell. Enclosed in its own fat, with its mouth speaking loudly. That's what the ego does. The ego speaks first. The ego speaks loudly. The ego is arrogant. The ego thinks that it is the center of the universe, that there really ultimately is no God. There is no spirit. There is nothing but you, and you're alone, and everything's out to get you, and you're going to die, and it's a horrible place to live, and isn't that wonderful? Right? That's the ego. That's the arrogance of the ego. And so that can manifest in all kinds of ways. And very frequently in a situation like what we're talking about in this psalm, where there's negativity being thrown at you, it can seem like the ego is manifesting as that person over there. But remember, there is no over there. Ultimately, the ego comes from within. And the ego is a decision that we made to think separately from infinite intelligence. So if we can acknowledge that within ourselves, we are immediately protected from any apparent version of that that's coming at us from outside of ourselves. They have now compassed us in our steps. They have set their eyes bowing down to the earth. When the eyes are bowing down to the earth, that just is talking about, if I can't see it with my eyes, it doesn't exist. If I can't experience it with my physical senses, then it's not real. That's how the ego wants us all to think. It wants us all to think only through our bodies. And if you think through your body, you're thinking through something that is imperfect, because there's not one person with a perfect body on this planet. Yes, on one hand, the human body is an amazing thing, but ultimately, the body is always breaking down. There's always something wrong with it. You're either going to get sick, or your eyesight fails you, or something happens where the body is an imperfect instrument. Yet the ego says, yeah, but everything that's real is the things that body can perceive, even though it doesn't want you to recognize that the body is imperfect. Even if you're looking at somebody traveling down the road, and they appear to get smaller, and then they disappear at the horizon. If you were going to really believe what your body tells you, you'd think that person got smaller and disappeared, but that's not true. So Since that's not true for that instance, then it's not true for any instance, that what you see with your eyes, what you hear with your ears is the whole truth. That's the ego. Like as a lion that is greedy of his prey, and as it were a young lion lurking in secret places, you can never underestimate the viciousness of the ego. Because the whole purpose of the ego is to separate you from your source. And it's just an idea. It's not a thing. It's not an entity. It doesn't really exist. But it is a habit of thinking separately. So if you're thinking fearfully, it means you're thinking from the perspective of that separated consciousness that we're labeling the ego. And it's like a lion that is greedy of its prey, like a young lion lurking in secret places. It's always there trying to scare you. It's always there trying to prove to you that this world is unsafe, that you're unsafe, that you're not good enough, that they're not good enough, that you're bad, that they're bad. Whatever it can do to get you busy thinking in terms of fear rather than in terms of infinite intelligence's love for you. Arise, O Lord, disappoint him, cast him down, deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword. So we want the ego to be disappointed. Yes, that means that if you have so-called enemies in this world throwing stuff at you, they're going to be disappointed too because they won't work. Why? Because you're not allowing yourself to have thoughts of separation. So there's no place for those thoughts to go but back to them. It's a little ninja trick that we use. It's what Jesus called turning the other cheek. People really misunderstand that. They think that that means, oh, please, sir, I'd like some more. You're going to hit me? Oh, please hit me on this side. That's not what that means. It means I'm going to prove to you that you can't hurt me. And if I prove to you that you can't hurt me, what you're throwing at me has no place else to go but back to you. You step aside and let their own evil return on them so that they can learn. And that's what this is. From men which are thy hand, O Lord, from men of the world which have their portion in this life, and whose belly thou fillest with thy hid treasure. They are full of children and leave the rest of their substance to their babes. It's a wonderful way of recognizing that even people that seem evil in this world are still from infinite intelligence. They're still from infinite intelligence. And everybody that's having an evil experience here is misdirected, whether they're on the giving end or on the receiving end. That we're all here as children of infinite intelligence, and we all have a right to our inheritance, which is that treasure of infinite intelligence. And there's not one person who you have or I have a right to say, you don't deserve that because of how you treated me. That's not up to you. That's just the other side of the same coin that keeps the problem going. But remember what we said just a couple of minutes ago. If you step aside and you prove to them you can't hurt me, I'm here with infinite intelligence who's guiding me and guarding me and giving me all the protection and help that I need. Their evil goes back on them, not so that necessarily it can even punish them, but so that they can learn the lesson that this is not the way to have action, reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction. Once we learn that we're not going to participate in whatever the problem is, and we step aside and allow ourselves to be healed, we actually are healing other people by our inaction. As for me, I will behold thy face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness. So when you awake with the likeness of infinite intelligence, that means that you wake up from this dream that we're having. In this particular moment, you might be having a nightmare about somebody attacking you. So you're going to wake up from that particular dream knowing that it's not happening anymore. And that will look like the manifestation of your spell. So you've cast a spell for protection, or you cast a spell for a reversal of this, and it'll look like that's what happened. But in reality, what's happening is you're waking up to the fact that you can't be hurt because you're the likeness of infinite intelligence. You weren't created vulnerable, you were created invulnerable. But until you stop defending yourself, you can't experience invulnerability Because if you defend yourself, you are declaring to your deep mind, I'm vulnerable. I must protect myself. But once we realize that infinite intelligence can protect us, we no longer use our minds like that. We change our thinking from, I have to protect myself, to, I am protected. Once you change from, I have to protect myself, to, I am protected, then nothing can touch you. You wake up to the truth of who you are, and that is a beam of life straight from infinite intelligence. And since you have all the qualities of infinite intelligence, that includes the quality of spirit, which is invulnerable. Nothing can harm you. Nothing can touch you. And you understand that when you allow infinite intelligence to be your source rather than trying to be your own source. And that's what this whole psalm has been getting at the whole time. And now, once you finish with this psalm, you are in a place where you can recognize that nothing can touch you. You are safe. You are protected. Now, if you don't feel that way right away, that means you just keep coming back to this psalm each and every day until you get that sense that you are safe, that you are protected, and that nothing can touch you. Once you get that feeling, that sense of peace and certainty that this has happened, that means your spell is taken and you don't have to work on it anymore. You can go on to something else. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, blessed be.